Hey there, and welcome to Parallax Headshot Part 2. In this section, we're going to be cutting our subject out from the background. Alright, so let's go ahead and review what we did in our first section. We started off with a color fill background. We brought in our sky here, our planet, and went ahead and just layer masked out the edges. And then we put some blue in there. We added some stars to the sky, and then we did a little bit of color work on there, just to add more interest. Alright. So now we're going to look at our headshot. We can go ahead and make our background invisible for now. Our headshot, we want to just cut our subject out of the background. Now, there are a lot of different ways you can do this. We're basically going to focus on the easiest way. Now, if you did photograph your subject on like a pure color background, in this case we photographed him on a dark seamless paper background, you can see it's basically all the same color here in the background. So rather than trying to make a selection out of your subject, oftentimes it's much easier just to make a selection out of your background. So we're going to start off with that. Let's go ahead and open up our headshot group here on our Parallax Headshot. We're going to click on our Magic Wand tool. So Magic Wand tool, we want to make sure we have anti-alias checked, contiguous, and sample all layers. Alright, and we'll start off with a tolerance of 20. Let's just type in 20 there and see how that works. Alright. So we're going to click here on our subject, and you can see it's selected like pretty much all the background, but it also selected some of the guy's helmet, which we don't want. So what we can do to fix that is lower our tolerance. So let's try taking this down to about 10. I'm going to hit Command D to deselect, and now we'll try this again. Alright, that's looking better. So we can see it selected a good bit of our background here, but not everything. So we're going to hold down the Shift key, and that brings up that little plus. You can see the plus next to my Magic Wand tool there. The Shift key just adds to the selection. So we're going to click a couple times where we see things did not get selected. There we go. Looking pretty good. If you do select too much, just hit Command or Control Z, and that's going to undo your selection that you made. Alright, we'll click down there. And then I would like to hold down Shift and click inside of here as well. There we go. We want that to be selected as well. Alright, looking good. Now, this doesn't have to be absolutely perfect as it is. We can always change this. This selection is just going to go to a layer mask. Okay, so we have our selection active. Let's go ahead and click on our layer mask button. There we go. And now we can see this is actually the opposite of what we want. So, on your layer mask, make sure you clicked on your layer mask, hit Control or Command I to invert. Alright, that's going to make everything that was light dark, and vice versa. Alright, that looks pretty good. So we've got our subject now basically on a transparent background. Now what I'm going to do is zoom in. We're going to click on our layer mask there, and I'm going to go to Select, and we're going to go down to Refine Mask. Okay, Refine Mask is a really great dialog box for doing things like smoothing, feathering, adding contrast, and shifting your edge in or out. There's also the Refine Radius tool. So click on your Refine Radius tool, and this is a great tool for creating areas like hair, basically like fixing this selection up. So with my Refine Radius tool, I'm just going to start painting right over here on top of the hair where my subject is. There we go. Let's just paint that to start off with. Now I'm going to let go. And basically what the Photoshop does is it figures out, okay, this is what we want to keep, and the black is what we want to get rid of, and it goes in and does most of the work for you, which is very, very cool. Older versions of Photoshop didn't have this option, and this took forever. So, thank you, Photoshop. And now let's go ahead and continue painting over the hair. There we go. And we'll let go. If it needs to grab any more areas, we'll just paint a little bit more over them. We'll do this area up here as well. Just paint on that. Alright, and then we'll do the same thing over here. Alright, and get our hair right there. Alright, now this isn't perfect, but we can go in and clean that up in a little bit if we need to. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now I am going to bring up smoothing just a little bit as well. We want to smooth the edge of our selection because it can be a little bit like gritty, especially down here towards this area. Oh, If you do something like that and it just erases too much, hit Controller Command Z and it will go ahead and undo. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now, again, the selection is not perfect. Let's go ahead and paint that down there. Alright, selection is not perfect as of now, but it's pretty good. So let's hit OK. Alright, there we go. Now it's time to see what this looks like on our background. So let's make our background visible. Alright, and we can see what our subject looks like in comparison to our background and about where we might want to put our subject in the composition. Alright, that looks pretty good. I want to maybe make him a little bit bigger. So we're just going to hold down the Shift key and just drag him a little bit larger. Alright, there we go. That looks pretty good. And then, you know what, this, like the sky, I'm going to move a little bit more to the right. So we're going to take our parallax background and just move this a little bit more to the right. There we are. Alright, I think that looks great. Maybe a little bit further up. Okay, cool. So we can see our subject is looking good on our background. Let's go ahead and turn this back off, and we're going to go in here and refine a couple more of these things. So we want to take care of this area here. I'm going to grab the pen tool and make a selection around my visor, because what I want, let's just create a new layer to show you what I'm about to do. Basically, on this new layer, we photographed the subject in a studio, obviously, not in space, right? So this is a reflection right here of a beauty dish, and I want most of that to be gone. So I want to create a selection that looks like this, kind of comes down in this direction, and comes back up and over there. But obviously with my brush tool, you can see how like shaky and gross my edges are. So I want a tool that's going to create a very nice, clean line right over here. And the best tool for that is the pen tool. Alright, so let's delete this video. Not the video, let's delete that layer. We're going to create a new layer, and I'm going to hit P for the pen tool. And let's zoom in by hitting Command plus a few times. Alright, so with our pen tool, I'm going to just click right here. We're going to go right up this way and then on down. So we're going to start there. Click right to about there. There we go. And I'm going to drag down in this direction there. Okay. And then Alt or Option, click on there, and we're going to pull this down in the direction we want our selection to go. And in this case, I'm going to go all the way down here. Alright, so I want from here all the way down there to be one solid curve. Alright, and now I can hold Control or Command and click on any of these anchor points and then change where this curve goes. So we can tell it, okay, you know, maybe we want to pull it in there. There we go. Alright, we can tell this curve we want to go from here all the way down to there. And holding Control or Command, you can move the curve around to anywhere you want. Alright, for right now, I think that looks pretty good. We'll get a little bit of this reflection in there, which I think will look pretty cool. Alright, now let's zoom in. We're going to hold Alt or Option and grab this, pull it back around. And let's go ahead and take care of some of this stuff here. We can cut some of that hair off and get rid of these weird blob sections there. Alright, and then we're going to go back to our original point and close it up. Alright, so we have a pen selection that basically just goes up there and back down and around. Cool. Now here in our pen paths, we've got layers, channels, and paths. Let's go to our pen path. Right now that is saved as a work path. We're just going to double click on there, and I'm going to call this visor. There we go. That just saves our pen path, so if we never need to get back to it, it's going to be saved right here under our paths. Okay, now still with the pen tool, we're going to right click. I'm going to go down to Make Selection. And we're going to feather this by 0.3 pixels. Feathering the edge just helps it look a little bit more realistic. Oftentimes your lines are like too sharp, they're too clear, and they don't look realistic. So I recommend feathering your radius by about 0.3 pixels. Alright, let's hit OK there. So now we have a selection in the shape of our pen path. And just like anything else in Photoshop, if you have a selection active, you can only affect that area. So if I had my brush tool, for instance, I could only draw, in that area. It wouldn't allow me to draw anywhere else. So here on my layer mask, I want to fill this with black. So I'm going to hit Shift Delete, which brings up my fill dialog, and we're going to go to black. Hit OK, and there we go. So we have a really nice clean line for our visor now. Isn't that nice? So here's the before and the after with that. It's just a very nice clean way to do that. Okay, now up here you see there was a little bit kind of weirdness going on. Let's go back to our paths. Alright, I'm going to make that a selection again. Alright, so we'll say make selection by 0.3 pixels. And now we can see we do have that as selection, but we can see this is kind of like we don't have any information on this side, right? So I'm actually going to inverse my selection now. So we'll go to select and then down to inverse, and now it's selecting everything but that area. And then here on my layer mask I'm going to paint white, and that's basically just going to like give me that nice clean line there that I was looking for. Alright, looking good. And if I want to get rid of this stuff, I can use my clone stamp tool, S for the clone stamp tool, and on a new layer I'll just clone stamp that out. A little bit of that. There we go. Just getting rid of a little bit of that reflection. Let's change our mode back to normal with our clone stamp tool. Alright, there we go, and Command D to deselect. So now we have a really nice clean line from our helmet all the way on down there. Alright, looking really good. Okay, now we do have a little bit of a weird area here, so we're going to go in here and fix that as well. So again, I'll hit P for the pen tool. Okay, this time we want to make a selection that just kind of like comes right down here from my visor. Okay, we want it to come up in this direction and up and around in that direction. Alright, so with that selection there, I'm going to right click here. We're going to go to make selection. Okay, it's going to select inside of there. I can go to inverse my selection, select, and then down to inverse. And then here on my layer mask, I'm going to paint white. Alright, and we'll just go out a little bit there. Cool. Let's deselect by hitting Command D. And now with our pen tool, I'm going to do the same thing on this side as well. Alright, there we go. We're going to right click. We'll go to make that a selection. In this case, I want to paint black to get rid of that thing there. Alright, and then I want this to be filled in there. So we're going to go to select, inverse my selection. Alright, and I'm going to paint white inside of there. That's just going to give us a nice clean edge there. Alright, so you can see how handy the pen tool is. It just allows you to create really nice clean edges. Alright, now with the brush tool, let's just paint this in with white here. You can make pen tool selections all over your image if you'd like. Sometimes you don't need to do that though. Sometimes it's just quicker to use a brush tool. I would recommend using the pen tool anywhere where you have like a large surface that has to be like one smooth line. Like this is a good example. Okay, so for instance, we'll kind of come down in this way. Alright, and then finish up right around there. So Control or Command I. Click on there, and then we'll just bring that around. So this line, basically from here all the way over to there, I want to be one smooth arc. Okay, and that's the best way, that's the best reason to use the pen tool, is when you need one large area that's a smooth arc of a selection. So we'll right click in there, make that a selection. Okay, again, this is a selection, right? So on our layer mask, I want to paint black with a brush, right? We want this to be invisible in that area. Alright, and then we'll go to select and then down to inverse, and then we want to paint white. Whoop. I just hit Command X on accident. My bad. Alright, then Command D to deselect. And you can see how nice of a job that did just to clean that up. And it really does look like a perfect selection. It didn't take long at all to do. Alright, we'll zoom in here and we'll paint this back visible as well. Get rid of some stray hairs and things like that. Alright, cool. Well, we're looking pretty good, guys. Let's go ahead and make our background layer visible again. And we're off to a really great start. Alright, and we can still move our guy around if we want. That's the beauty of compositing. Now, we are going to do one quick thing here. I'm just going to go into our headshot. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to fix this up a little bit. This is a reflection in the visor from our light that we use in the studio. So on our new layer, let's hit S for the clone stamp tool, and I'm just going to clone stamp in this area here. Alright, there we go. So I'm just sampling from the surrounding areas and clone stamping right over top of that little reflection. This sort of thing happens sometimes, and it's not too difficult to remove it. Alright, let's just zoom out, make sure it doesn't look super weird. Alright, you could also try the healing brush tool. Let's make that invisible. On a new layer, we're going to try the healing brush tool. Sometimes the healing brush tool just works better than the clone stamp tool. So I'm going to sample there, and we're going to start painting over this area with our healing brush tool. Alright, yeah, it looks like this tool's doing a pretty good job. You have to kind of go over it a few times, but it's doing a really good job blending everything together. Alright, so the healing brush tool, you just want to hold Alt or Option to sample your source, and then paint over the area you don't want. Alright, yeah, that looks pretty good. Did a nice job of removing that reflection. We'll do the same thing with a couple of these reflections. I don't mind some of these reflections. It helps it to look like it's actually, you know, that he's got a piece of glass or plastic right in front of him, which we do want. It's supposed to be like space visor. Alright, and while we're here, I'm just removing a couple little spots. Some blemish control over here. And this is very simple to do with the healing brush tool. Alright, and let's zoom out and see what we got. Let's remove that spot there too. And that one's a little bit distracting. Alright, looking good. Cool. So let's just make this layer visible and invisible to see. There we go. Got rid of those nice spots there. And then what we did with the clone stamp tool probably would have worked, but the healing brush tool turned out to be a little bit better. Alright guys, we've got plenty more to do, but that's the end of this section. Thanks so much guys. We'll see you in the next section.